Hi, welcome.
Hello. Welcome everybody to our live stream. This is Educarte's very first online event. I'm Kate Spanos. I'm here with Pablo Regis. We're the founders of Educarte, and we're here today with a performance and conversation about Brazilian jazz with Geovane Santos and Richard Miller. We just want to say a few words first about Educarte. We're a brand new 501c3 nonprofit organization based here in Maryland, where we are, that provides educational programs in music and dance. Our focus is on community building and cross-cultural communication. Our programs build a vibrant and diverse cultural arts community and encourage artist and audience collaboration.
That's right. And this is our first program we're very excited to bring to you. Little inside information. We had one of our board members for Educarte, David Rosenblatt, suggested that we talk to Geovane Santos. He's a fantastic Brazilian guitarist who resides in New Orleans. And he thought his story was fascinating because he started with Brazilian music in classical, or actually, I'm sorry, he started with Brazilian music in Brazil, and then he moved on to classical music. He studied that formally. Then he studied jazz, and now he sort of returned with elements of that back to Brazilian music. And our mutual friend, Richard Miller, has a similar background. Today. And with that, let me just introduce them. So first we have Giovanni Paiva Santos. He's currently a local presence in the New Orleans music scene. Giovanni Santos is a native from the city of Belo Horizonte. He's a guitarist, a composer, and arranger, a vocalist, researcher, and educator. He's an awardee of the 2017 Louis Armstrong Foundation Jazz Composer Award through ASCAP in association with the University of New Orleans. Santos holds an MA in Jazz Studies from University of New Orleans and is now a first-year PhD student in the Lane University. Then for Richard Miller, he was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to an American father and a Brazilian mother. Richard Miller was the musical director of Oliverio, a Brazilian twist, for its premiere at the Kennedy Center. Recent credits include a special performance for Pope Francis, a White House performance for President Obama, a residency at Club Bonafide in New York City, and a cross-country solo tour entitled A Rhythmic History of Brazilian Music. With the mass theory, Richard is a dedicated educator teaching at Columbia University for the last 8 years and directing the education programs for the Afro-Latin Jazz Alliance in New York City. He also taught at correctional facilities through Music on the Inside. Richard's publications include the book The Guitar in Brazilian Choro and its CD, It's Time. A longtime practitioner of yoga and surfing, Richard created Balanced Guitar, a guitar, yoga, and surfing retreat that takes place in Costa Rica. You can get more information about that at www.balancedguitar.com. Richard now calls Southern California home. Balanced Guitar is offering online guitar classes such as jazz, improv for classical guitarists, and theory on frets. With that, let's bring on our guests, Giovanni and Richard.
And really quickly, before we bring on our guests, we're very excited to have these performers, these artists and educators, which really speaks to our mission at Educarte. And we want to really thank our board, who's really helped us get Educarte off of the ground. That includes Ken Howe, Ann Kennedy, and David Rosenblatt. We also want to give a special thanks to Matthew Shiflett, who is a friend of mine from the Theater and Performance Studies world, who gave a very generous donation to help us get this organization started. So we want to give a special shout out to him.
Yes, special thanks. Thank you.
All right.
All right, we have everyone here. Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
let's start off with Giovanni. Can you tell the audience and us more about your history, which what David Rosenblatt had told us about you that's so fascinating, and how you came to play uh, guitar, and how your journey here to the U.S. up till now.
First of all, good night, everyone. Is a pleasure for me to be here, and it is always nice, talk about Brazilian music and talk about guitar and talk about, what makes us always keep on going. I started off studying guitar because, and this is the thing that I learned last year. My father just told me that it was his dream to play guitar. But he could not never play guitar due to like some financial things that problems that they have with their family growing up. So he had to give up school to work and help my grandmother to bring money to the house and feed his siblings and some of his aunties. So I started studying guitar. I was 9, 10 years old, but I was already jumping from extracurricular activity, like just doing all sort of things, the taekwondo, football, like the soccer actually, and painting and artistic drawing. And guitar was the last thing that my parents put me on, and I was also kind of like, more or less not really dedicating my time to it, even though I had the facility. It was easy for me to play guitar. So one day, my father pretended like he went away. He dropped me for the class and he pretended that he went away, but he actually was like just like peeping through the window and seeing me acting up in the class. He walked back in the class and shook me up. Man, what you doing? We tried everything with you, and you don't dedicate your time to none of that. So that shook off my music through the rest of my life to this point. So if it wasn't that
Well, thank you to your father.
that shook up, probably I would just have quit guitar as I quitted many other things. So from that point, I went on to study on the local conservatory, studied classical guitar. Went on to do my bachelor's in classical guitar. Then after I finished my bachelor's, I started doing the a second bachelor's in music education in parallel playing, like you said. I started off with Brazilian music, then jumped to classical guitar in between, like playing rock and some fusion stuff. Then I fell in love with gypsy jazz because I had a professor, an instructor during the conservatory years that he was like a aficionado with this music. So he put together a group and I played with them as the lead guitarist for that. So I played gypsy jazz to the end of my second bachelor's, and then I moved to the States. Stayed in Florida for a little bit with a former partner, and then we moved to New Orleans, which is the place where my ex partner was from, and from there, started like kind of getting acclaimed within the local music scene. Started my master's at the University of New Orleans, and here I am. And my master was in jazz.
Right, and now you're just about to start, or you started your first year at your PhD program, right?
Yeah, I'm about to start the PhD program at Tulane University, and it's all about, you know, finding my identity as a Brazilian musician after I left my country, and I was kind of like, oh man, I'm gonna go to the United States now. I'm gonna become a real jazz guitarist, but it didn't really happen because there was too many people playing jazz already, and I wouldn't be able to succeed if I did so. And one remark that's really important in this transition from playing classical gypsy jazz and like really focusing on Brazilian music is that I met a guitarist, New Orleans legend Carl LeBlanc, and he gave me a lesson. I saw him play one night when I was visiting New Orleans back in 2012, and I asked him, "Hey man, can I take a lesson with you?" Yeah, sure. Come to my house at 7 o'clock in the morning. Went to this guy's house at 7 o'clock in the morning, and just played all the classical repertoire I had. Like 3 hours of classical repertoire. Played it all. And then, so what else you got? I played all the gypsy jazz stuff. I had like 2 or 3 hours of gypsy jazz stuff. Yeah, great, man. But you said you're from Brazil. You're gonna play something from like some Brazilian music for me. And I had like only one song that I could really play, but nothing else. And he said, "Okay, the lesson I'm gonna give you is this. You're gonna go back to your country. You're gonna learn Brazilian music because you're playing this classical music, great. You're playing gypsy jazz, great. But like, people are tired of this stuff. People in here, if they know that you're Brazilian, they want to hear Brazilian music. So that point on, from 2012 up, I just dedicated all my time and energy and focused on kind of blending the language that I had and the technique I had from classical and jazz into playing Brazilian music that way.
Were you can so when he suggested that to you, did you feel um were you disappointed? Were you excited? What did you think about his comment at when he told you that? Were you
At
had just played all this
first,
wonderful music and he
yeah.
told you to play something else?
Yeah, at first I felt frustrated, because I went to him to hear, man, let's play some jazz stuff. This jazz stuff you're playing is great. But like I said, at first, I was really frustrated. But I guess that was one of the best things in terms of like the sincerity that he had to come to me and say, man, just open your eyes because playing music is more than just playing music. You have to have a purpose to do in doing that, and you have to represent something. And for sure, I was playing all this classical music and gypsy jazz music, but it wasn't really representing who I am or who I was then as a person. You know,
Right.
it represented like a
Right.
taste I had for the music, but not really my identity as a black Brazilian musician.
And so you for the audiences who caught that but didn't catch it, you're from Belo Horizonte, right? Is that where you grew up
Yeah,
more or less then?
I
So
was
you grew up
born. I was. Go ahead.
so for most Americans will be very familiar with songs from Rio and Bahia, which is more like Axé music and samba and carnival. But Belo Horizonte has a very rich tradition of music from Clube da
Hmm.
Esquina.
Yeah.
Did you what was Brazilian music for you when you were growing up?
Man, I listened to basically everything, with the exception of the very super commercial stuff. These things were things that my parents didn't really dig. They didn't really like that. I had my uncles kind of like bringing in the sertanejo music. That's like the sertanejo raiz, the stuff
Right.
that they liked, and they listened to all the more commercial sambas. The pagode stuff from the 90s up. They listened to that too. But within my household, we listen to like the MPB, like the top-notch MPB that you can think of, plus a bunch of like Jimi Hendrix, Supertramp, Pink Floyd, Rolling Stones. My father's like he loves Rolling Stones. Uh, what else? Like Queen, BB King.
Sure.
All this American influences. And that was about it. But I never really felt like as a person that played the guitar that I needed to play Brazilian music then because it was so on my face all the time, that I wanted to play something different. So I fell into playing a bunch of the like Black Sabbath as a kid, System of a Down, Red Hot Chili Peppers, because those are the things that they had going on MTV then. And if you did grew up in that time, you had like all the kids in the school watching MTV, and if you play guitar, you want to be hip and like I don't know, be seen in the school. You learn the tunes overnight. Oh, it just came out on MTV. You learn that tune, and then you bring it to playing recess.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, I grew up in Brasilia, and it was the same thing. I grew up listening to a lot of Brazilian music in my family, but Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Guns N' Roses
Yeah.
was popular. That's what we want to do. So let's turn over now to Richard Miller. And Richard, we're going to hear from you a little bit, but can you also tell everyone about your musical journey?
It's really interesting because I'm just meeting Giovanni, and it's so interesting how similar our musical backgrounds are. I grew up in Brazil, and I also started playing guitar around 9 years old, and I also didn't take it that seriously. It was like a chore. I was more into surfing and capoeira, and I two things happened in Rio when I was around 14 or 15. Um, the first was my friend's father discovered that I play guitar. And so every time I would go over, his father would say, "Oh, I've learned a new chord," something like that. And he would show me the new chord he had learned. And that's so Brazilian. The second thing that happened is this little girl from across the street died in a car accident. She was about 13 or 12, and everybody went to the funeral, and she was buried in this little white casket. And all my friends were crying, and I couldn't cry, maybe because I was raised by an American father. But I went home and I changed my friend's father's chord, and I did this, and that's when all the tears came out. And then that's when, for me, when I realized what music really had the potential to create. And so when I was 15, my whole family moved to Tennessee. So from Rio de Janeiro, surfer boy, to Tennessee. And so I wrote this song called "There Ain't No Sea in Tennessee." And I was there depressed, just moping. And my brother walks in. He says, "Why are you so depressed?" And I said, "Well, because I can't surf in Tennessee." And he said, "Why don't you do something that doesn't require an entire ocean?" And so I looked at my guitar in the corner. And at 15, that's when I started becoming more serious on the guitar. And then I went to college and I did classical music. I did a master's at Manhattan School of Music in classical guitar. I came back from that and I moved to Washington, D.C. And I went to take a guitar lesson, much like Giovanni, except the question that was posed to me, and he did not have the patience to listen to 5 hours of music. he, he listened for 45 minutes. And then I was in this conservatory mentality. The teacher tells you what you should learn next. And so I said, what do you think I should learn next? Thinking he was going to say, "Oh, you need more Spanish repertoire, you need to play some more Bach," or something like that. And he looked at me and he said, What do you want to learn?" And I was like, "Oh, I want to learn." And I was driving home. I said, "I want to learn Brazilian music." And and like Giovanni, I played one or two Brazilian pieces, and they were mostly classical, like. And so I never looked back. I just started learning, and then I would be playing Brazilian music. Somebody told me to take a solo, and I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" And so it's been all these years trying to learn a whole new language of improvisation um, and all of that. So now I've moved to Southern California, and I get to surf and play guitar.
Sounds like a winning combination. Well, so we've talked to you now. Why don't you play a piece for us?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. One of the things that when I was growing up in Rio, we used to, my friends and I used to go and listen to this group called Acor do Som, and they were like a modernized choro group, and so I've always loved choro, and so this is a choro written by the incredible Chiquinha Gonzaga, who was way ahead of her time. She was active from 1870 to about 1920. She's credited with having created the first samba, and this is a mashishi that I'm going to play. It's a mixture of and um, polka and lundu. So lundu was a rhythm from Africa that went da 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 da, and polka, of course, has the da, 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 da. So what happens when you mix them? You take the pa out, and instead of you put in that African rhythm, and you have a mashish.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. So you said that was by a composer, Chiquinha Gonzaga, and she was cutting edge at the time. She was mixing European and Brazilian rhythms, which is really the essence of all the music in the most music in the Americas, but also music in Brazil. And you gave a great little description of how that mixed. So hopefully we can have a show in the future where you go more in depth about that. That'd be fantastic. But I want to put on the screen now. We have a comment there by someone, by Sanaz, that's saying bravo. And also, if we can get on the screen, Richard's donation page. If anyone would like to donate to Richard, They can go to his PayPal. And also, Richard, you have guitar classes that you teach online. We're also going to put that on afterwards. Can you describe a little bit about your guitar lessons just so people know?
Yeah, we do group classes, and it's an opportunity. We're all we all have a little extra time. Some of us don't, but inside of the pandemic, we have a little extra time, and we can actually connect, kind of like we're connecting right now, um, with New Orleans and Washington D.C. and San Diego, and so I'm doing guitar classes, not individual lessons, even though I do individual lessons. But the fun part is the guitar classes, and the opportunity is to connect with other musicians, and people practice outside of their class time. They practice together, and I find it a lot of fun. So we have classes like
Great. Balance guitar.
yeah, balanceguitar.com.
Okay, we're going to put that on the screen. So since we had your live performance, I'd also love it if we could get Giovanni to come on and do a piece for us. But also, we're going to, if we can post a donation page where you can donate to him. And I want to make people aware that Giovanni has an album out on Spotify that people can also go there to listen. And we'll be posting the link about that as well. But if they look for Giovanni Paiva Santos, you can find him on music. And he also has a website, which we will share that information. And Giovanni, if you want to just tell us about the piece briefly, and then you can go ahead. You're on mute, by the way. There we go.
I'm muted.
No, you're fine.
Am I back? Okay. Great piece, Richard. Really nice, man. The piece I'm gonna be playing is a composition of mine. I wrote this tune last time I was in DC. That was last October, like the end of October. Was just like bouncing from place to place. You know, I stayed with a couple friends. I stayed with David Rosenblatt for a couple days. Stayed with my friend Julian Beckwitz for a couple days. Played some gigs with him, and then I went to Virginia to play play one gig with Juan Magna on his PhD recital. And within all this bouncing around, you know, I had this idea in my head, and this song came to me on a Sunday, you know. So the name of the song is, in English, would be like Sunday, or I don't know, a beautiful Sunday, and in Portuguese is dia de domingo.
All right, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, so, what I want to pose a question to you, to both of you. Maybe we can have one person first and the other. And then we have a comment from your friend Juan Megna, Suceso, and Juan is a good friend. What is it that you find? What is it you find valuable about going back to Brazilian music after you've been through classical? Do you think it was necessary or important, or has it changed your experience? Let's start with Giovanni, for example.
Okay. For me, it was more of a thing of identity. You know, Brazilians, they tend to, that's like is really general lines. They tend to like minimize the importance of their nationality and their pride. You know, you're proud of Brazil when it's playing against Argentina. You know, you're proud of Brazil. You know, when you're talking about not having hurricanes or earthquakes and stuff on that sort. But in my case, I remember very well. You know, Brazilian music didn't really resonate to me in a sense to like make that be the music I wanted to play to represent me musically and artistically. But when I came to the United States and I saw so many people trying to play Brazilian music or playing Brazilian music or getting gigs because they have the label Brazilian music, or even like seeing professors in universities teaching Brazilian culture, and just like I felt that there was something missing. You know, there was something related to the narrative that these people brought to the table. You know, so and being a person of color from Brazil, coming from like a humble background, and seeing things related to race, class, identity, and you have a bunch of other things that are put on top of that. You know, the whole idea of capitalism and colonialism. It sparked on me after I had that class with Carla Blanc back in New Orleans in 2012, that if I invested my time in like mastering Brazilian music and being like the contender to speak out that truth, I will be way more successful because I will be talking from experience. You know, I could bring to the table the fact that I'm descendant of black people. I'm a black person myself. I play music that's Afrocentric, and you know, I guess it just made more sense for me to go that way. You know, and having all
Is that
the
something?
technique. Go ahead.
Is that something you're going to be exploring in your PhD studies?
Yeah, the PhD studies they will focus on the relationship in between race and music appropriation, not music, culture appropriation in between the United States and Brazil. You know,
Oh, great.
it's more like I said, is a thing about narrative. You know, what you're capable of saying, because history is told, is passed through, is written down by the winners. You know, and the winners
Right.
very often, you know, they're people that they tell the story the way they want to tell, so then they can shape the future. You know, and so I would like to change this concept. You know, this the whole concept of what people know and understand about Brazilian music, and bring to the table, you know, this discussion about, you know, hey, you know, this music is actually black. You know, it's not only white people that play that, or it's not only white people that come to the United States from Brazil. You know, you also have black people coming from Brazil to the United States. You know,
Wow.
in positions other than, you know, what people are usually used to see. You know, the whole thing related to the underground service industry. You know, because I faced a lot of that being in New Orleans and being a musician. You know, and I used to have really long dreads, and I was never considered to be Brazilian. You know, first I was considered Jamaican because of my dreads, or Dominican, or like people Haitian, or even, you know, like Ethiopian. I've gotten to be called Ethiopian sometimes also. But like whenever I told people, "Oh man, I'm from Brazil," so, "You from Brazil?" I didn't know there were black people in Brazil. So, okay, okay. And all
To
of that,
Bahia.
just how, yeah, or if you are from Brazil, you are from the places that people know that historically you have more black people,
Sure.
which is like Rio and Bahia. You never from other places, and that kind of brought to me, a bunch of questions about, hey man, something must be said on that regard, and in terms for you to have a voice in this country or even like in Brazil or anywhere in terms of like being heard of it, you either super rich to do that or you have like a PhD, so then you can like like you can publish papers talking about these issues and people will hear, talk about and discuss things about that too.
Wow. So speaking of which, I don't want to change it too much, but we do have a question from someone who wrote in the chat. And also, let me encourage everyone that has a question, please send it in so we can ask both Richard and Giovanni. Be happy to talk to you. The question is, and maybe we can pull up that question on screen again to see who asked it. But the question is, how has traditional New Orleans music, there we go, from Arnold Little II, how has traditional New Orleans music influenced your delivery of Brazilian music?
Oh, that's that tricky question. I was listening to traditional New Orleans music for many years before I even stepped foot in New Orleans. I was listening to all the like the Louis Armstrong recordings and some the brass band stuff, or even like the Danny Barker things. And that is funny, because I felt like there was a connection in between, the whole Cajuanish transitioning to the black tradition of the New Orleans melting pot and some stuff from Brazil. We have stuff in the Northeast that are very connected within. And I think that what influenced me the most was this thing on the backbeat, and not only that, the whole notion of the usage of dominant chords throughout progressions. You have that thing related to like the way you have most of the second line songs put together, or even like this thing that is basically like a blues form played with the second line rhythm. This could possibly be some part of it, and also the whole traditional jazz thing that I also bring with me from like the very beginning of my initiation with jazz.
Wow. And thank you again for the music. That song was beautiful, and it's an original composition. I want to jump over to Richard Miller now. Can we ask, because I'm going to give a confession here. Actually, Richard and I played together in a shoto band in Washington, D.C. when he used to live here. So I know him well. Also, you're on mute, so if you can unmute yourself. And Richard, can you tell us a little about your research? I know, maybe let us know how you went to Brazil and studied the 7-string guitar and where you have been going in terms of your music.
Yeah, I used to play 6-string guitar, and I bought a 7-string guitar and went to Brazil for 3 months, and with only the 7-string guitar, because when you're used to a 6-string guitar and you look at a 7-string, it's so disorienting, because we orient to the lowest note, and so the lowest note is not what you're used to. And so I took it to Brazil, to Rio, and I connected with this famous, not well known outside of Brazil or outside of Rio, but he's on every recording from the 40s and 50s and 60s. He was a guitarist for Jacó do Bandolim, and
What's his name?
Dino Sete Cordas, Dino 7 Strings, and Jacó do Bandolim, the great mandolin player from Brazil, found a job for him at a store teaching guitar in the 60s, Bandolim de Ouro. I went in 2001 to Brazil and found out that he was still teaching at this store. So I just walk off the street and ask him if I can study with him. And he looked at his calendar and he says, well, this guy hasn't been showing up, so come on Monday at 11 o'clock. And so I was there every Monday at 11 o'clock. Um, and it was so great. Um, and I also studied with Marcelo Gonçalves, who
Oh
was,
yeah.
yeah, he's from Trio Madeira, Brazil. Um, and also he was the guitarist for Rabo de Lagartixa, and now he's um, playing duets with Anat Cohen. And so Marcelo Gonçalves is one of the great seven string players. So I would study twice a week with them. And I left being able to play seven strings, and I can also go back to six strings. So, um, yeah,
So if you
and
want to learn seven string, go to Brazil with a seven string and
yeah.
come back 3 months later.
And then also for me, the the question about why Brazilian music, and is because Brazilians have this tendency to um, kind of like Giovanni was saying, appropriate the cultures, just and create the best out of the whole thing. So Brazilian music has the African rhythms blended with European rhythms, and the jazz harmonies blended with a European sense, a melodic sense, and then the poetry, the poetry of the Brazilian poets, starting with Vinicius de Moraes and all the amazing poets from Brazil who put their words to music. It's just so rich, so complete, and so balanced. And so when you play Brazilian music, you need that classical technique, and you also need that jazz improvisation. And so that's why I called my organization Balanced Guitar, because it's a balance. It's the world between jazz and it's a world between classical, and it's that middle ground that's beautiful, with the jazz harmonies, the improvisation, everything balanced. So yeah.
Well, that was a well balanced explanation. Let's move on to have you play one. Can you play an original piece for us also?
Sure. Um, this was when I was writing my dissertation. I interviewed Ginga. I love Ginga. Ginga is my favorite living composer right now.
Great.
He's what I love most about him is that he's a dentist, and there's a whole conversation among musicians that you only can make money from music, and Ginga and Jacques do Bandolim, they had a different view. They said, um, how do you keep your music pure? Is by having other sources of income. So Ginga is proud to be a dentist. Anyway, I listened to all his recordings. I read his biography. I just absorbed everything I could about Ginga, and then I went to interview him. And he is one of the most generous people that I have ever met. After an entire concert, we went back to the lobby of his hotel and just had a conversation. And for him to explain the music, he just pulled out his guitar and started playing. So he gave us a whole other private concert. And so after that, I was with our friend Gigi.
Oh
And so
yes.
we got his number in Brazil. And one day, Gigi leaves a message on my answering machine saying that she had just spoken with Ginga, and Ginga sends a kiss. And the minute that she said that I heard that this melody started playing in my head, and I believe it's like a mixture of all the Ginga stuff. And so Gigi Macaxeira, that's it. So this is called Beijo de Ginga, a,
Wonderful.
a kiss from Ginga.
All right, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beijo de ginga.
Beijo de ginga.
So we're very lucky to have two 7-string players with us tonight. We're getting close to the end of the show, so I wanted to bring it into today and ask. And there we have another conversation.
Thank you so much.
I want to ask you guys how you're coping, Richard. While we're talking to you, how are you coping with COVID and being a performer? This is a really trying time for anyone that works, really for everyone, but particularly also for performers that work in the arts and performing live music. It's a hard time to find work. It's a hard time to find income. You have to get creative, and maybe you can tell us sort of what you've been doing and what your whole feeling about this is. Maybe what you're hoping for the future.
So I see all possibilities. I was directing an education program, and I found that a lot of my teachers found problems, and I was always looking for the teachers that found solutions. And so, yeah, I was just so lucky to be in this course that started. I started the course in February, and then the pandemic hit in March, the quarantine. And right when the quarantine, the leader of the course, Marcus Bell, the course is called the Wealth and Impact Boot Camp. He came on and he asked a question that completely switched my way of thinking. I was thinking, what am I going to do now? And because all my income stopped. And he said, what can you do now with what you have to offer to serve the world? And that just completely turned my head around. And I said, oh, I could start an online concert series to support the musicians who aren't going to be playing and the people who aren't going to be hearing live music. So I created an online concert series every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's called, well, the minute I created it, this organization that I used to teach for called Music on the Inside, it's a prison music education program. I used to teach in prisons in New York City. They asked to partner with me. So we called the series Music While We're Inside. And we invite musicians from all over the place to come and join us. We've had great musicians. Tomorrow we have Dalfeo Marsalis, the brother of Wynton Marsalis, trombone player.
Oh.
He's playing tomorrow with us, and we play every Sunday at 6 p.m., and it's to raise money for prison reform. For me, prison reform means abolishing prisons, and right now we go into prisons, and the prisoners will often tell us that the only thing that has advocated for their humanity is when we come in and teach them music and have them perform. And so this concert has become a fundraiser for Music on the Inside. It's called Music While We're Inside. So that took off. And then I got a reputation for being patient with people as they learn technology. And so the Duke Ellington Center for the Arts and the International Women in Jazz all have been hiring me to do their concerts. And so I've been doing like maybe 8 to 10 gigs a month. And the most exciting one is the one that's going to happen tomorrow, which is I'm playing at Birdland. Virtual Birdland with Paquito de Rivera. It's going to be the best gig I've ever done because I've already done it. I recorded my part, and it's I just can relax and watch it. So it's with Arturo O'Farrell and the Afro Latin Jazz Orchestra. It'll be tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. It's Virtual Birdland. So.
How can people watch that?
It's going to be Facebook Live, and I saw Marietta there. Maybe, Marietta, you can post the link to the concert tomorrow?
Yes, please do.
Afro Latin Jazz Orchestra on Facebook tomorrow. That's it. And yeah, so it's going to be with Arturo Farrell, 6-time Grammy Award winning, and the Afro Latin Jazz Orchestra, and 14 Grammy Award winning Paquito de Rivera, and
Wow.
little Richard Miller.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I want to thank you, Richard, for taking your time to be here with us. You're volunteering. No one's being paid to do this. Speaking of which, if anyone wants to donate, maybe we can throw again one more time, Richard, and just performing artists doing incredible work. The work we're doing with inmates is that's wonderful. That's fantastic. And then we're gonna go to Giovanni now, and maybe he can leave us some words. What have you been, going through? You're starting your PhD program. You're obviously getting, and New Orleans is a place that's quite busy. It's, more difficult to get around. Maybe what you're doing, what you're envisioning for the future. And if you have any work that's coming up or classes you're giving, please let us know. We can share that. You're muted, by the way.
Okay. Am I sounding up?
Yeah.
Okay. What I said is that I'm not as hip as Richard. I'm not doing as much stuff as he's doing right now, but I'm taking this time to basically work on my original stuff. I've been just like creating live tracks of that, so then I can play over. Just like arranging my music, learning new material. Practicing the guitar. Just I decided to delve into the cavaquinho, to learn how to play those grooves. Been working on percussion, been working on crafting percussion instruments, been creating lesson plans. I also teach online. Just like trying to get like a personalized, a customized way of teaching each individual student. Uh, Dedicating my time to photography and uh, video editing, and just like trying to enjoy life as is right now, because being confined at home, and this whole thing about the pandemic, that you can't really socialize much. You gotta do the best you can with the stuff you have around you, and try to enjoy that, because it's very easy for people just to spiral down, get depressed, and just like go
Yeah.
insane. That's the thing that I've been seeing some of my friends uh kind of like being challenged with that. They enduring this kind of stuff, and I'm very fortunate that I didn't have this problem. And like Richard said, in order for you to keep your music pure, which is what Jaco also praised with his musicians, and he really gave his musicians a bad time, because he always said, I'm the only one among of y'all to have a real job, and I still practice my music. Y'all are musicians full time, and you're not practicing music. And the thing is, I have sources of income coming from different places, like as a teacher, as an interpreter, doing like Portuguese to English and vice versa for schools and doctor appointments and stuff, whenever they need translation for these things, and arranging and online classes and the gig stuff, also come in as income. And I have the privilege, I would say that this is a privilege, to play the gigs I want to play, and to just like, if I get a gig that they were not gonna pay the musicians out of my own pocket, so then I can play the music I want to play. Whenever I'm
Wow.
playing stuff under my name. And the thing is, this gave me the kind of flexibility I want, because the being in New Orleans, you have to be kind of a jack of all trades in order for you to get around. People call you to play from zydeco to rock and roll to wedding band to bounce music to anything. So if you down on the grid to like play this kind of stuff, you're gonna be, ground to the ground. They're gonna use you to the end, and then you just like fed up, and you just play music as an obligation, instead of doing that as a pleasure thing. So I I did that for a while, and then when I started getting jobs outside of the music scene, it kind of gave me this flexibility to just play the music I want to play. And right now,
Interesting.
since the pandemic hit, uh, I didn't really have any problems, because since I had this like income to prove that I was working for a formal place, I could get into the unemployment insurance, which many of
Hmm.
my musician friends could not because they didn't have any form of like proving that they did have any kind of income, you know. So
Yeah.
that's the thing to be thinking about.
Wow. Well, I want to thank also both of you again for being here and let everyone know this is the first program for Educarte, Washington, D.C., actually in Maryland, but in the DMV area. And we're going to bring you more programming. Our next show is going to be actually with local singers, Edlene, wonderful Brazilian jazz singer. We're going to have Cisa Paz, another beautiful singer from Rio, and Jose Moraes from Brazil, from the south of Brazil. They're actually going to sing first, perform, but then they were also going to give some tips on how they approach doing different types of Brazilian music, like Northeastern and Bossa Nova and whatnot. So stay tuned for that. You can also donate to Educarte if you like. Thank you, Viviani, for thanking me. We're very lucky to have these two guys here. And I wanted to ask if Giovanni, if you want to play us out with a song, that would be
Yeah, sure.
fantastic. And everyone
Kind
have
of
a good
like
night.
related to the question that Adam Little, who's a very good friend of mine and a great saxophone player from New Orleans. New Orleans, as for now, the tradition of New Orleans in terms of like being the traditional old jazz, this exists in some parts of the city, but the city is a funk. It is a hip hop, neo soul, modern jazz, free jazz, free improvisation town. If you think about it, with all these pockets, and being part of this community, kind of like makes you absorb. And if you hip enough, you absorb what you hear in this part of the city and the other part of the city, and you input that on your music. This song I'm gonna play is entitled "Ipe." It's kind of like a hip hop-ish. If you had the drums, you will hear that. But as for now, I'm just gonna play kind of like an acoustic version of that song. The name of the song is
Okay.
Ipe. Ipe is a Brazilian tree that basically all the leaves fall and you have only flowers. It's kind of like a cauliflower that pops out in the middle of all the trees that you see, and usually is either purple, yellow, or white. And they also have pink. It's like the entire tree turns out into flowers, and then the flowers fall off, and then the tree is just branches popping out.